I think all League of Legends players who've played ranked can relate to this feeling of just being stuck beyond your control. So I'm making my way through my second season of ranked in League of Legends, and it's been one hell of an experience and one hell of an emotional roller coaster. And I think all League of Legends players who've played ranked can relate to this feeling of just utter despair. And that's how I felt over the past 20 games. And I want to share it with you because every player who's played League of Legends and ranked can relate to this. This matchmaking that's based on essentially chess, which is a 1v1, which is applied to League of Legends, which is a 5v5. I think the feeling of starting a game and whether or not you're going to win or lose just feels out of your control within 1 minute is a pretty common feeling in League of Legends, especially in ranked, and it has just been blowing my mind as of late. And it makes you wonder things like, oh, is there a loser queue? You know, you end up Googling it on Reddit and going through like TikTok videos to see if it is, and then you have like these two massive disparities where there's videos of people proving that, you know, they've been matched people with 30% win rates, then you have pro players, really high level players saying that if you think there's loser queue, you're actually like brain deficient. And then you have Riot coming out publicly saying there's no loser queue. I do think we have to establish that if a matchmaking is built around maintaining a 50% win ratio, that there has to be some influence in keeping you there. And that's going to bring me to my experience of the past couple of days. So the start of the season, I was feeling pretty positive. I was like, you know, I've got bronze rank in my sight. My season started off so well. And around 40 games, I had like a 65% win ratio, and I was at Iron 1, 91 LP, and I was like, crikey, I'm actually going to get it. I'm one game away from doing it. And then I experienced like, you know, a couple losses, a couple wins here and there, and I bounced down to the bottom of Iron 1, then I bounced back up, and I was hitting like 88 LP, 96 LP. I was getting so close to bronze. So I played top lane, and I was getting matched against a lot of bronzes. I realized at this point that playing a bronze 4 with 0 LP is basically like playing someone who's an Iron 3, because they tend to be awful. But when I was getting matched against bronze 3s and 2s, I was struggling. There's no way to say it. I wasn't beating them. I was struggling to win lane. I was struggling to draw lane. At the same time, I found that the entire team was bronzes, and there was literally a bunch of Iron 1s to 3s against an entire team of bronze 4 to 2. But this did start to bring my win rate down, and that was fine. It felt okay. Like I was like, you know what, I'm getting back down to like 56% win ratio. I'm having some games that I felt like, you know, were even, and we lost them because of us just being good enough, and it felt fair, and we won some of those games, lost some of those games, because I kited around Iron 1 for probably around 15 games, like 2 wins followed by 2 losses, yada yada yada. I did notice this weird thing with top though, which I was blue side every single game, and I've actually worked it out that I was blue side 17 of 20 games, which means not a lot to a lot of the other roles, but to the role of top lane, it means that you are being counterpicked even if you're last pick every single game. And although counterpick isn't the end of the world, because it does come down to skill, it does mean that they don't have to be as good as you to beat you in lane, which makes it frustrating, and it just felt like unfair because it was just happening every game. I was like, I'm not getting any chances to get any counterpicks here. And to be honest, when I play, I don't actually go for massively counterpicks. I just like the idea that they can't counterpick me, because I'm only going to play Volibear, Yorick or Set, but I just like the idea of them not picking directly to counter me. And this is when I realized how annoying Warwick is in top lane, because you just can't beat him in lane with the characters I play, or you can, but he just ends up roaming around with all these movement speed, and the rest of the team can't deal with him, which is why I always ban Warwick. It's not because I can't deal with him, it's because the rest of the team just can't deal with him. So I ended up banning him, and this is when I realized that actually Yorick has a hard time at a Trundle. Not a really hard time, you just can't really win lane because you can't out damage him, which just means that you're stuck at this point where you're like, well, I can't really get a massive snowball lead here, so I'm relying on my teammates to win this game, or at least to do well in the first 15 minutes, which is when it started to spiral. And I went on an 8 match loss streak, which was insane. I had a 6 match win streak the day, like 2 days before, and this 8 match loss streak was actually soul destroying. And after 3 or 4 losses, I was down to Iron 3. So I went from playing against Iron 1 to like bronze 3 or 2 players to having teams of Iron 3. And this is when like I've obviously progressed, and there's a massive jump in Iron 4 to Iron 1, because literally Iron 4 to 3 are players who can't win enough games to get out. You can't win like 3 or 4 games on the bounce. And this is when I started to get a massive amount of inters, like a crazy amount of inters, like people who are running it in tower after 5 minutes, people saying, oh, don't troll, and then literally trolling themselves. So over my last 20 games, I had 4 games of inters where someone was inting, like they weren't taking part in anything, they were literally trolling with smiling faces, just running at tower. 4 of those games. I then had 2 or 3 games of troll picks, people picking like Mundo as support and Volibear top lane is a prime example. And then I started to look, and I noticed that these players had about a 25% win ratio, and I was like, my win rate started dropping, and I was at 50%, and I was like, these 8 games have massively brought me down from a 56% win ratio to a 50, and I'm now getting matched with players every single game who do not have a 50% win ratio. like literally the highest win rate is like 44% in a lot of my games, where it's like a 44% mid, a 42% jungle, and a 20% bot lane and support lane. I was just like, what is going on? And I was like, how are these people even playing? Like, and it just opened my eyes to this like standard of like absolute gutter player, where they're like in every game you got an ADC who's dying like 6 times by 9 minutes. And you're like, bro, what are you doing? And it just kept happening. It wasn't like a one-off. It just kept happening. It was like the most bizarre experience ever. I was just absolutely flabbergasted at it, and I definitely focused so much on early game that my mid to late game is not good enough. I've identified that and I'm trying to work on it, but so I struggled when I've got a massive lead to really close down these games, and especially when it's a 1v5, and which is a lot of time it feels like. I've literally played games where we've had 3 kills which have been all mine, and they've had 21 kills in about 60 minutes, and they're already down to our Nexus, and you're like, right, we've only been playing like 17 minutes, and I've won lane a little bit. You know, I've taken their tower, but then I haven't had time to roam because they're already down to our Nexus through mid and bot. And you're like, what? It does make you think, is the loser queue real? Because I feel like I've never even seen these players. And then over the woodwork, over 10, 11 games of ranked, I've seen some of the worst players I've ever seen in the game. And I think the problem with Iron is there is this group of players, and there's clearly way more than I thought of, who are Iron 4, who have no concept of how the game works, have no idea how to play any of the characters. They're first time people all the time, and they literally have a 20% win ratio, and there's way too many of these players than there actually should be. I imagine that's a difference from, say, silver onwards, where there's not people with 20% win rates, because they get relegated, they get demoted, right? Like, you know, if you're silver and you have a 20% win ratio, you're going to get relegated to bronze, and then you're not going to be able to climb back up to silver. It just creates this really funny, like, just like when I'm talking about it, I've been really, honestly, on a Saturday that's happened, I was like, you know, I've got a full day at myself, I'm going to play like 10 games. I might even get promoted today, but instead I went on an 8-match loss streak where generally it felt like I had no control over whether or not I won or lost. It's absolutely madness. I suppose this is the problems of solo queue, and I think it's funny now. I'm literally talking about it. I'm literally thinking like how bonkers those games were. But at the time it bothers you, right? Because you feel like, you know, I want to play a game, I want to earn LP, and I want to rank up. I do think that a lot of the players I play against have no perception of the game, and it's just crazy to think that like you can be winning a lane, and then literally you've won a lane, you've taken a tower, and then literally because mid's got 12 kills and that jungler's got 12 kills by 50 minutes, they just crash your wave and they just crash you, and they realize you're on like 4 kills, no deaths, and they just literally hunt you down and kill you because you're the only player who can actually do anything. It's just crazy that these players exist, and it's like a real eye-opener, but at the same time it's equally frustrating where it's like it's not normal draft, like, right? You see people literally trying out new champions all the time, like first time players, you think this is not normal, this is ranked, like you can see why they're down here, but then you feel sorry for anybody who is actually playing them because it affects their rank. And this is why the MMR does become frustrating, because you're like, it's not my fault. I had a game today where I had 2 of the worst players I've ever seen in a bot and a mid who were both end of the game and like one and kill 13 deaths, and I was playing jungle and I was just getting crashed on and I couldn't help these lanes. And the only reason why we won is because this Twitch player had something about him, and he actually ended up getting a quadra kill at about 25 minutes when they had taken every single one of our towers and we had 1 inhib left, and that we were able to then get Baron and push through to their base, which put pressure on them. With their hubris, they were really aggressive straight away, and then he actually got a triple kill, and then I got a double kill, and then we were able to push and win the game. And it does make you realize that like playing these teams of really bad players, it does just take that second to turn the game around. And I think that game was a real eye-opener for me, because a lot of time I gave up really quickly, and I was like, there's definitely some unsalvageable games, but there's definitely games where even though you've got a team of inters, the other team are actually in us, but they've actually managed to be lucky and be against even worse players. But if you can keep level-headed and you can steal a kill here or there, you can actually punish them so severely. And I think this game was a real eye-opener for me, but it definitely has been one crazy journey over the past 20 games, to the point of like crazy going from like 60% win ratio, thinking I was literally 1 game away from hitting bronze, to then getting put on this massive loss streak, which just felt so punishing. I don't know if there's a loser queue, and I'm not going to say there is, I'm not going to jump on any side, but there's obviously some matchmaking that influences the players that you get on your team, especially if it's trying to maintain like a 50 to 55% win ratio. But there's this idea that the more you win, the harder the players you go against. And I feel like that is definitely what I experienced, because at a point, you know, I had about 67% win ratio. I was getting put against these like bronze 2 players, and the game might have been thinking like, okay, this guy, if he can win these games, then you can get into bronze and start getting a lot of LP. And obviously at the stage I'm at now, clearly wasn't good enough to carry games, and that then threw me down. But then it threw me down to the barrel barrel when I was like getting like actually bad, and like the players standard was insane. I literally had this game today where this Lux basically said, oh, my bot lane's terrible after a minute, and it just came up top lane and the jungle came across, and then I recalled, and when I recalled, they just stole my farm and stayed there and stole all my farm, and this Wukong just ran around stealing everyone's farm and then ignoring objectives, not doing anything in the fights. And we lost the game, obviously. You can imagine having literally 4v5, and I looked at his stats afterwards and I was like, Jesus, like this guy's playing ranked and he's just in every game he plays. He must average around 2 kills a game and he must average around 7 deaths a game. I was like, this guy plays jungle, he literally throws every game he's in, and people are gonna like just play with him and just have a horrible time. Like when you have a jungler who literally refuses to take part in anything, just farm his own jungle, to buy items, to not do anything, that makes a hard situation because the objectives make such a difference at this point, especially considering there's so many of them now. So yeah, I just want to make this video because I've had a hard time, and actually talking about this talking about it out loud has actually made us just like realize how stupid it's been and how wild it actually has been. But I have no doubt most players who've played more than me have experienced this many times. And I would actually love to know what your worst experience of playing ranked is, like the worst game or the worst loser streak you've been on. Like whether you have been loser queue, it would make for some funny comments to read down below. I think it's just a case of just understand that this is the problem of solo queue, or not the problem, this is the experience of solo queue, is literally just having some crazy games, but it definitely does feel like it delays your progress. But maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's there for a reason. Maybe it actually keeps you where you should be. Who knows? I don't know. But I'm hoping I look back this year, and hopefully in a year's time I'll be like, oh, I'll be like silver or gold, and I'll be like, God, what a chump he was, because, you know, I am a chump. So, you know, there's that.